I have with me David Pakman. He is a progressive host and executive producer of the nationally syndicated radio and TV program, The David Pakman Show. And I wanted to talk to David Pakman. He is a beta male. David Pakman. He is a beta male. So beta male. David Pakman. He is a beta male. David Pakman. He is a beta male. So beta male.
Can you remind the audience, when you talk about being a beta male and being an alpha male, what are we talking about here?
There are males, most men today, male, they think and act like a woman. They're emotional, they are mentally off, they have no logic. And that's a beta male. They go along with homosexuality.
Hold on, whoa, Jesse, we got it. That's a lot.
LGBTQ.
That's a lot.
They
Hold on.
agree with everything that's raw. Abortion, they think and act just like a woman. A beta male does. But a non-beta male doesn't, because he's a logical thinking. And they're controlled by the darkness of David Pakman. He is a beta male. David Pakman. He is a beta male. The beta male. David Pakman. He is a beta male. David Pakman. He is a beta male. The beta male. David Pakman. He is a beta male. David Pakman. He is a beta male. The beta male. David Pakman. He is a beta male. David Pakman. He is a beta male. The beta male. David, you're not here to communicate. I really appreciate you coming on. I'm going to let you go. It's a waste of time to talk to you. We're not communicating. You're acting like an idiot.
Because you're asking bizarre questions.
You're
and not
acting like an
any.
idiot, and you're wasting my time. I appreciate you coming. All right, thank you for coming.
So
Goodbye. Goodbye. Let him go. That's a progressive vote. All men who are progressive, or males who are progressive, are weak people. They are.
All right, guys. Yeah, let's put a stop to that, because we have we have a lot of things going on today. This has been a very busy day at David Pakman Show headquarters. We had so let's see. I filmed our hour-long podcast for today and the YouTube clips. Usually Thursdays I film the Spanish language show as well, which I did. And then we had a stream earlier, a press briefing with Rudy Giuliani and a variety of Trump's lawyers, and it was unhinged. I'm going to have some clips for you of that. And then now we have a White House coronavirus press briefing. We don't know who is going to show up today. Okay. I mean, listen, Trump may be there. He may not. When they say White House coronavirus task force, sometimes that's with Trump. Sometimes it's without. We just really don't know at this point, and it's scheduled for 15 minutes from now. So we'll see who we get and who shows up. But I would expect it to be extraordinarily unhinged, is my point of view. Jeremiah just sent $100 super chat and says, courtesy of David Pakman YouTube subscription UPG, I am now president now with all the bigliness I can muster. I defer all decisions to David and a team of experts to very strongly defend the Constitution. From the standpoint of my equally BS presidency, believe me. Wow, Jeremiah, I hope that you were not having a stroke when you wrote that. I love the support. But I don't know what Jeremiah is talking about. That's bizarre. Thanks, Jeremiah, though. I really appreciate it. If you missed earlier, you guys have to see this. Earlier today, Rudy Giuliani, it looked like he was bleeding from his ears during this press conference. But then when he turned sideways, I guess really what it was is his hair dye. I guess because of gravity, he must have some kind of spray in hair dye that as he sprays it in, as gravity takes hold, it goes down. And it started leaking. It looked like blood. Look at this.
Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona. we more than double.
That's crazy, right? And it kept going.
So what we're telling you is supported by evidence. And we're going to have to present.
Let me see if I can get us a better view of this. Hold on. Rudy, here it is. Yeah, look, I mean, just look at it looked like he was bleeding from his ears the entire event.
Right up. So what we're telling you is supported by evidence.
It's absolutely insane that this is where we are right now. And then I guess I haven't pre-screened this, but I guess they left some audio feed was up and you can hear people talking about what's going on. I haven't heard this. Let's listen.
And at once, all for Joe Biden. That's like flipping a coin 186,000 times and it lands on
See fucking Rudy's hair dye dripping down his face.
Happen. There is no reasonable explanation for the upshoots, the straight lines up. I'm not even talking about an angle. I'm talking about some massive
I just saw it pop up on the stream.
The vote tallies.
Oh my God, what a technical mistake. I don't even know what stream that is, but I mean, could you script a more insane event than what took place earlier? The hot mic. I need to listen to this one more. Oh, so people are saying that this was captured from Trump's official YouTube feed. This is what went out on Trump's YouTube feed.
And at once, all for Joe Biden. That's like flipping a coin 186,000 times and it lands on
See fucking Rudy's hair dye dripping down his face.
Happen. There is no reasonable explanation for the upshoots, the straight lines up. I'm not even.
It's a comedy of errors. I mean, it's just unbelievable. There's no words for what took place here. And by the way, the arguments that they made didn't really make a lot of sense. I'll play a few clips for you guys in a little bit as we're standing by for who knows what we're standing by for. Some kind of update about the virus, which is ravaging the country. Just to get this in the record, yesterday, 176,000 coronavirus cases and 1974 deaths, which means we will very soon, maybe even today, be back up to 2,000. We're already at 1,000 today. And some of the major states like Texas and Florida and New York haven't even reported deaths yet. So we might be past 2,000 deaths today. As you know, 1,500 is like a 9/11 every 2 days. And we could very well be getting up to 3,000 a day, which would be like a 9/11 every single day. Trump is checked out. Unbelievable. Okay, a few super chats coming in. Barry says, to put it into TV terms, America has chosen to leave it to Biden over desperate House Trumps. Great coverage today, David. Mr. Red says, hey, David, want to say keep up the great work. Friendly Fire says their audio was hacked by Dominion. You squeaking out, these people should be in prison while crying with laughter in the last stream set me off. Haven't laughed so much in ages. Yeah, I can get that clip if people are interested in that. Let me see here. Twitch.tv/David Pakman. We're going to have some self-contained. Let's see if I can find it. So this is my live stream, which I don't want. Let's go to, how do I go to clips? Videos? Recent highlights. Wow, I don't even know how to find my own clips. It's so pathetic. Where are clips? Videos, home. Filter by, past, oh, clips, beautiful. Okay, yeah, I think this is the one.
Coomer, I believe his name is. Eric patent holders, Eric Coomer, I believe his name is on the web.
That's too perfect.
As being recorded in a conversation with Antifa members saying that he had the election rigged for Mr. Biden, nothing to worry about here, and they were going to
I can't
Trump.
take it, guys.
His social media is filled with hatred for the president and for the United States of America as a whole, as are the social media accounts of many other Smartmatic people.
Oh, it's too much.
There has been widespread.
Okay, anyway, I guess that's not the right clip, but that was earlier. It really was a mess. I mean, it was. I've never seen anything like that. So that was earlier. Okay, very good. I'll play a couple of clips from the event earlier for you guys. Here's Rudy explaining that a lot of what he's saying is speculation.
Night, 700,000 or 800,000 in Pennsylvania. Somehow he lost Pennsylvania. We have statisticians willing to testify that that's almost statistically impossible to have happened in the period of time that it happened. But of course, that's just speculation.
Yeah, we know that's true. Julie, let me see other ones that I want to mention. I just want to get to the really crazy ones. Oh, this is when Rudy reenacted a scene from My Cousin Vinny.
Probably the closest they got is from here to the back of that room. We could do like a, did you all watch My Cousin Vinny? You know the movie? It's one of my favorite law movies because he comes from Brooklyn. And when the nice lady who said she saw, and then he says to her, how many fingers do I got up? And she says, 3. Well, she was too far away to see it was only 2. These people were further away.
Right. I mean, just on the basis of that one scene from My Cousin Vinny, I would give the election to Trump. He talks about Philly, a lot of padding dry throughout the entire event. This is genius. Listen to what he says.
In 80-20. So you see a change as a result of the election in Michigan, if you take out Wayne County.
Right. Guys, listen, Wayne County has 18% of the population of the state of Michigan. If you don't count the vote from Wayne County, you just remove it, Trump wins Michigan. It's that simple, guys. I mean, that's pretty open and shut. What else? He lists a whole bunch of states. A lot of this is just trash. Oh, this was a delusional moment when Sidney Powell, it sounded like a Hannity monologue. Take a listen to this.
To know right now that we will not be intimidated. American patriots are fed up with the corruption from the local level to the highest level of our government, and we are going to take this country back.
From who?
We're not going to be intimidated. We are not going to back down. We are going to clean this mess up now.
It's so fun. They're acting like this. It's like, just look at the map, guys. It's like, what is Trump's path? Trump lost. What they want to take back is that Trump lost. It's crazy.
Now, President Trump won by a landslide. We're going to prove it.
Yeah.
And we are going to reclaim the United States of America for the people who vote.
Yeah, so there's that. And then the only other moment I wanted to play for you is, where is it? Yeah. Okay. So at a certain point, if you're whoa, look at this expression. If you're trying to convince right wingers of some kind of a conspiracy, you are well served to include a rich Jewish man in the conspiracy. If he's a foreigner, even better. And so we eventually got to the George Soros portion of the press conference.
With a company whose chairman is a close associate and business partner of George Soros.
Right.
The biggest donor to the Democrat Party, the biggest donor to Antifa,
right,
and the biggest donor to Black Lives Matter.
Right. So anyway, that kind of is like, that's how you close the loop. Listen up, kids. That is how you close the loop on conspiracy theories. You throw in an anti-Semitic element, and then belief in that conspiracy goes up significantly from the right, even from some on the left. I mean, I'm not going to pretend there isn't anti-Semitism on the left as well, although it takes a little bit of a different form. So that was earlier. Like that, everything we've looked at so far was today. I know it's insane, but that was all today. Let's see. I did have one voicemail I played earlier. Okay, hold on. Let me not fall behind on thank yous. Let me say thanks to Nahum Jacob is new member number 1 today. And Alexander Nelkel is new member number 2 on my website, joinpacman.com. And then we are counting, my pen just collapsed. We are also counting Twitch subs, of which we've had 4, which puts us at 6 today. It's all good today. We're counting all of it. Okay, let me play. I played this voicemail earlier. We've got a bigger audience now, so let me play this one for you. This came in overnight.
Hey, Pac Boy, you flapping your arms around, you're going to fly to Venezuela?
Right.
Why don't you talk about the dirty cocaine head Hunter Biden and his corrupt pay-for-play father, dysfunctional father, Joe?
Right.
You don't mention that, do you? You Democrats don't do anything wrong. You guys they're so filthy. I hope they get a special counsel, and I hope they fry his ass.
Right.
Ha ha.
The death penalty for who? Fry whose ass? That's bizarre. Anyway, so that's the type of thing that's coming in pretty regularly at this point, and they've really ramped up since the election. There's been a big ramp up since the election, and it's quite sad. I mean, it's sad because when I actually recorded. This is a really strong clip. It's about a 15 minute clip, hour long, maybe 3-4 minutes. I don't actually know how long it is. Recorded it today, and we'll be publishing it later today, taking more seriously this idea of deprogramming 75 million people. And what I think a lot of people are forgetting is that it took 30 years to program people, because the Trumpism that we're seeing today is really the end result of what started in the 80s under Reagan, with these bogus ideas of the welfare queen, some mom, a black mom with a Cadillac and 10 kids who's living the life on food stamps or whatever, right? This was like this bogus idea of the welfare queen from the 80s that started with Reagan. That is the Trumpism today is the end result of coalescing that the people who fell for that and got crazier and crazier and crazier. So if it takes 35 years to program the people, you're not going to deprogram them in a year. You're not going to deprogram them in even a couple of years. And if you look back in history, in fact, when there have been rapid reprogrammings, they have been authoritarian dystopias. So like one rapid reprogramming in history was the Chinese Cultural Revolution under Mao Zedong. And the way that and that took a decade, the way that China reprogrammed people in only 10 years was through absolute brutal authoritarianism. So you have to understand that, and people are pointing out Gingrich and Limbaugh. Yes, all of these things. Check out the book Waves of Rancor if you want to understand how talk radio fed off of the Reagan ideas of the 80s that started a lot of this stuff. Look, there's a lot of literature, scholarly literature on a lot of this stuff. It's going to take potentially generational turnover, as people are pointing out. That is exactly right. That is exactly right. Because the only way to do it quickly is with a brutal dictator. And that obviously would not be a great thing for the United States in other ways. Okay. Is my audio cutting in and out, guys, for real? There's always like two people who claim that they either can't see me or they can't hear me, but everything looks fine on my end. Okay, yeah, it's almost exclusively user error, as I like to call it. It is funny though when people say they can't hear or see me, because it's like, then how do you know I'm even on? Big thank you to Nick and Jamie Coffin Callis, who are together new member number 7 today. I also want to say thanks to the 3 additional Twitch subs who get us numbers 8, 9, and 10. I very much appreciate that. Couple of other super chats coming in. Jeanette Mason says, if Trumpet had won this time, would he have left the White House in 4 years' time, or would he have tried something to keep him in there? No, he would have left. No one programmed people in Lithuania to blindly support Trump. It did not take 30 years. I don't know enough about what's going on in Lithuania to be able to say. But I would love to learn more about it. We can start by insta-banning conspiracy posts on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You post conspiratorial videos or comments, instant ban. Yeah, I mean, the problem with that is who decides what counts. That's anytime you want to talk about regulating social media, who gets to decide? And then when who's in power changes, do they just get to impose their perspective? So that you've got to be very careful with that. You have to be very careful with that. Thanks also to Leaf Westermark. Leaf Westermark is new member number 11 today. Do I have any songs? I do have songs. I don't really have anything new. I do still have this video. Wait, do I have it? I'll play this. I have the video of producer Pat reporting me to Trump's voter fraud line. Take a listen to this. I still find this very funny. I think this one will have a lot of replay value. Let me just see here. Hold on a second. Let's shrink this down just so everybody can see it accurately. There it is. Okay, this is Pat reporting me. Take a listen.
Hello, yes, I would like to report voter fraud today.
Sure. What's your experience?
Well, there's a certain David Parkman who I know to have voted in Nevada 3 times at least.
Okay, and what county is that?
In Clark County. He goes there twice a year for a conference. And also, he happens to be giving out borderline illegal membership discounts.
Right.
Like 50% off, 60% off, 70% off. And I'm worried that that could be sacrificing the integrity of the election.
Okay, and what was your name?
My name is McDonald.
Okay, well, I'll send this on your behalf. Thanks so much for calling in. Bye-bye.
Within minutes of this call, the entire Trump voter fraud reporting line was shut down. That's not a joke. I mean, I think I'm not saying that it was causally connected, but within minutes of Pat making that phone call, they decided they were getting too much spam and prank phony phone calls that they shut the entire thing down. So we've got that. Yeah, that's producer Pat's real affidavit. That's absolutely right. Donald McRonald says, David, love following you through this, but don't try to find any sense with this legal fight. Everything is in bad faith and a setup for Trump news, like Fox News scare tactics on steroids. Not an altogether crazy thing to say. Yeah, that certainly may be. Let me see here. Amethyst Cat sent a 500 Norwegian kroner super chat with the message, "Make America meow again." Oh, yeah, I got a bunch of cat videos of cats watching the David Pakman show and reacting to it. I don't have any handy right now, unfortunately. And as far as songs go, this is DJ Physics in the Name of Jesus. I think I've only played this one once. Take a listen.
And secrecies and demonic plans and networks. We break it up and we command that it be exposed right now in the name of Jesus. Strike and strike and strike and strike and strike and strike in the name of Jesus. Strike until you have victory. For every enemy that is aligned against you, let there be that we would strike the ground for you. Right. Victory, God. I hear a sound of abundance of rain. I hear a sound of victory. I hear a sound of shouting and singing. I hear a sound of victory. Strike and strike and strike and strike and strike and strike in the name of.
So that one goes on from there. What else do I have? This is Paula's Deluge.
Strike and 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 strike until you have victory.
This would be like, if you're getting a cavity filled at the dentist, they play something light in the background. And then here is the song Highly Triggered Individual, which we also love.
Should I play this? This is one of the most vile callers we have. Take a listen to this. I have not pre-screened this, so let me just warn you.
Yeah.
This may not be suitable for children.
Hey, little prickless. Now that your hero is there, are you going to sit there in your little kimono and wear your little hat, rice, because it's going to be called No Free Speech, Red Chinese Communist Speech. But you can't have pork because you might offend the Ayatollahs. After all, they're going to love this too. They're going to make a bomb, and I hope they drop it right on your freaking ass. But you can't have pork. But you can't have pork.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't have pork. You like to stick that microphone right up your ass. You can't have pork. You can't have pork.
So anyway, the musical the musical elements for the show continue coming in as we are standing by here for the White House Coronavirus Task Force. We have no idea whether Donald Trump will be there, whether he won't be there. It's anybody's guess at this point, but we're, I guess, going to hear something from someone about how great this administration is doing at fighting the coronavirus. Okay, Ryan wants to know, do I think Biden will deport more people than Trump did, similar to how Obama deported more than Trump? It's completely reasonable. It's completely, that's absolutely a possibility. I'm not really specially equipped to make any kind of prediction, but I think that that's absolutely a possibility. Have I seen the Trump concession speech from Jimmy Fallon? I did. It's very funny. Very funny. Have I seen the Biden versus Trump epic rap battle? I have not. That I have not seen. But I would be interested in looking at it maybe a little bit later. The other question that we don't know about with today's press briefing is whether they will take questions. There have not been White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany hasn't done a press briefing in a while, well, she showed up as an individual last week to say it was stolen by Joe Biden or something like that. But she hasn't done a proper press briefing and taken questions at this point for a very, very long time. Donald Trump hasn't taken questions for a long time. We've not even seen Trump for a while now. And I have no idea who's going to be here today. I have no idea if we're going to hear from Pence, Trump, Scott Atlas, Larry Kudlow, Bricks. I just don't know. And whether they take questions is another issue. And I don't know. I hope they do, because it's time for some serious questions. I don't know why they are refusing to take questions at this point, although I have some guesses, certainly have some guesses as to why that would be. Let me get to a few other super chats that I missed. Across the board says, thanks for keeping me sane. I thought it was just me. Follower for life, Jackie TYT on Twitter. All right. Okay, I already did that one. Would I ever debate or have a sit down with Jimmy from Philly? Probably not. Let's just check. That does remind me, though. Let's see if we have any new voicemails from Jimmy from Philly. I haven't. That's on a totally different voicemail line. Let me see if we have anything. I could even check both voicemail lines, really, and see what we have. I might have something for you guys. No, nothing from Jimmy from Philly for a while. Nothing there. And then on our other voicemail line, let me see here. It does look like I have. Hold on a second. My name is Winnipeg. We're flapping your arms around the Venezuela. Okay, flapping my arms around Venezuela. I've already played for you. And okay, no, I guess I don't have any other voicemails for you guys today. Oh no, I do. I think I have. I think this is a Troy York voicemail.
Yeah, David Packman. I like your video about Trump attacking Iran. I think that's a good idea. I think he also should attack Nicolas Maduro, because the role Nicolas Maduro has played with the intrusion of drugs in America and throughout the Americas.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he also played a role of setting an alliance with the Democrat Party to commit the biggest election fraud in our electoral system ever. And I'd like to see Trump, in addition to bombing Iran, he should also invade your country of Venezuela, which I have called.
I've never been to Venezuela. My family's from Argentina. I don't know anything about it.
For him to personally deport you as a citizen transnationalist of Venezuela. You are a propagandist from hell. You are a liar. You are a fabricator. And I hope Trump deports you and you can face.
I'm a U.S. citizen, yeah.
American soldiers and try to man up and not being a soy boy. I think that Trump is really going to hammer it because these two countries have meddled in our affairs.
He's acting like Trump's going to have 4 more years to do stuff. It's like he's not even leaving he's not leaving the White House. This is crazy.
They have funded domestic terrorist organizations and insurrection in America, and they have done their part since 2004 to meddle in our elections much more, in addition to meddling with our mainstream media to manipulate the viewers. They have done more to meddle in our politics than the lies that you give about Russia.
Does it count? Would this guy could be considered to be malding? Is that an accurate? Is that the right use of the term, guys?
In 2016, and for 3 years, you attempted to fraudulently dethrone our great president, Donald Trump. He stands in the way of the globalists' desire to destroy the dollar, as Glenn Beck says, and to
Glenn Beck.
Basically, he's the only thing standing up to the globalists. And people.
By the way, doesn't the term dethrone not make sense when it's a president and not a king?
Such as yourself for total control. You are the epitome of evil. You are an enemy agent of Nicolas Maduro. You are a demon.
Guys, I'm against the Maduro. How many times do I have to say that I am against the Maduro regime? I don't like it. I don't think the U.S. should be involved in any way down there, but I am not a Maduro guy.
You are a pale ghost danger to society, and I hope that Trump sends in the full forces and creates total chaos and warfare, perhaps a world war against those who would manipulate and interfere with our elections. And I think Trump is going to come for people like you. David.
Trump's got 9 weeks, guys. What are you talking about?
Pac-Man, you have propagandized and lied, and you've been a domestic agent and terrorist all this time.
Right.
And I think you might want to prepare yourself for the eventual overthrow and warfare with Venezuela, your native land.
I've never been to Venezuela. I have nothing to do with Venezuela. What a bizarre voicemail, right? Very, very strange stuff. Let's briefly see what Kamala's saying.
President-elect Biden and I will make sure you have the resources and support you need to save lives and help get our economy back on track. And we will also make sure that our federal, state, local, and tribal authorities are working closely together so we can tackle these challenges as effectively as possible. Because when it comes to this pandemic and the economic recovery, we are not Democrats or Republicans. We are Americans, and we will be there for one another. That's the kind of leadership the American people need and deserve, and it's the kind of leadership President-elect Biden and I will provide, and it is now my great honor to introduce President-elect Joe Biden.
So we will keep an eye on the White House press briefing. It would be amazing if we could watch all of this first. That I think would be interesting. I don't know if Joe Biden is pausing for a little sanitizing. They are, bringing in the sanitizer, moving the binder, and Joe Biden waiting patiently for that. Nicely done.
Hello, folks. Good afternoon. Thanks for your patience.
Oh, boy.
The Vice President-elect and I, as this was pointed out, have just concluded a video conference with the executive leadership of the National Governors Conference. They included Governor Cuomo, New York Governor Hutchinson, Governor Hogan, Governor Whitmer, Governor Ivey, Governor Polis, Governor Baker, Governor Lujan Grisham, Governor Herbert, and Governor Carney. And it was really a worthwhile undertaking. You know, they've had to make some really tough calls during this unprecedented crisis. And we're incredibly grateful for everything they've done and keep doing to try to keep their communities safe. Unfortunately, because of the lack of discernment, as they say, that's a fancy word these days, but until the head of the GSA says that we, in fact, our team, this transition team, our team, the senator and I, have in fact are the likely winners. And until she does that, we don't have access to all the information that we need to get from all the various agencies.
Imagine that.
We're not able to deal with everything from testing to guidance to the all-important issue of vaccine distribution, and even more importantly, vaccination plan to actually get vaccinations. We haven't been able to get into Operation Warp Speed, but we will take what we've learned today and build it into our planning. The country is still in a crisis, and there's a dark winter still ahead. Yesterday, America reached another tragic milestone, 250,000 deaths. 250,000 people died due to COVID-19. And there are empty chairs and dining room tables were filled just days and weeks ago with loved ones, family, friends who laughed and talked together. To those families and friends that are left behind, Jill and I send our love and our prayers. We know, like many of you do, how tough it is to find purpose in the memory of a loved one you've just lost. It'll take time, but you'll find it. You'll find it. And you'll find your purpose as we're going to find our purpose for our nation as a nation now. I promise you that. And I promise you that we'll work together. There's a great meeting we had today. All the governors, no matter their political party, whether they're from wherever part of the country they represent it, no matter their political philosophy, shared a strong and abiding sense of a common purpose. There was a real desire for a real partnership between the states and the federal government. Each of the governors emphasized that we might be Democrats or Republicans, but we're all Americans first. They congratulated us heartily for our win. What really pleased me was that the governors made clear that beating COVID-19 is going to require all of us working together as one country.
Imagine that.
Kamala and I agree. We were deeply impressed with how much consensus there was, how to move forward among the governors. What we need to do now is how we need to do it. How are we going to do it? In what coordinated way can it be done? We discussed a number of critical ways we can work together and unify around a national approach to controlling COVID-19. First, delivering economic relief to the cities, states, and tribal communities. The lost revenue from COVID and the cost of COVID recovery is devastating to state and local budgets. As governors, as all of them indicated, we've got to come together. The federal government has to deliver this relief sooner rather than later, and with flexibility for the states to meet their needs. This includes helping businesses, schools, working families. From unemployment benefits to early education, continued access to affordable health care, all of that's needed during this pandemic. States and communities shouldn't have to lay off teachers, cops, firefighters, cut vital services for families and businesses. The second thing there was uniform agreement on, delivering a safe and equitable and free vaccine. The governors all acknowledge that this will be a massive undertaking, one of the greatest operational challenges we will have faced as a nation. One statistic that was raised by the governors, it took 8 months to provide 100 million COVID tests. 8 months to provide COVID tests. Just imagine how much more difficult it will be, they pointed out, if we don't find a more efficient and effective way to provide 330 million vaccinations. Put it in perspective. They made the point, we can't wait. That's what the governors are raising. In the meeting, we discussed the challenges that lie ahead in distributing and administering the vaccine. The governors talked about how getting doses of vaccine distributed is just one step. We have to actually get vaccinations into the arms of 330 million Americans. That takes enormous resources, people, product. We discussed the difficulty of that task. It's going to take time. It's going to take coordination. It's going to take the federal government and state governments working hand in glove, working together. The governors all emphasized we need to be clear with the American people about what to expect. No false expectations. Let them know what we anticipate. They all acknowledge that this is going to take a massive public education campaign. And we also need to reach traditionally underserved communities that are being hardest hit by the pandemic. Black, brown, Latino, Latin American community, Native American communities, small towns, rural communities. They talked about that in some detail. Thirdly,
just to catch people up, so we did not know this was happening. Joe Biden is speaking a little bit about his conference call with governors on coronavirus. We're also standing by for a Trump press briefing. This is the first time I've ever seen a sign language interpreter during one of these with the Trump administration. And this is something Joe Biden has been doing now for a little while. It really seems like they're just copying it. It's interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I don't think that we saw that before. But we are standing by there. And let's go back to Joe Biden for a bit.
Our view is that should be done. When it comes to deploying the National Guard or COVID or real relief, that should be paid for. You know, that's something Kamala and I will be very focused on. And fourthly, we discussed the implementation of a national mask mandate. 10 governors,
wow,
Democrat and Republican, have imposed masking requirements and recognized the need for universal masking, north, south, east, and west. It's not a political statement. It's a patriotic duty.
Wow.
And fifth, we discussed making testing more available and accessible. Anyone who wants a test should be able to get one, period. And finally, while we focused on the immediate needs to control the virus, The governors also raised and talked about how much we have to build back better, especially on infrastructure and education and so much more. This was not a one-off meeting. I committed, we agreed that we'll continue to work and meet with the governors on a regular basis.
Sounds like they're going to do stuff.
Their input. And that our COVID teams will follow up and coordinate on the issues coming out of that call. Because some of them have very competent people on their COVID teams in their states. The bottom line, we can do this. There's nothing beyond our capacity, but we have to come together as a country. What this meeting, along with others we've had, reinforces, in my view, is the unity the country is looking for. They're looking for us to come together and deal with problems, most of which have no ideological basis for disagreement. That's what we have to do. That's what the governors talked about. It really was pleasing to hear them.
Wow.
I want to thank you all, and may God bless you all and those who lost someone. You're in our prayers. May God protect our troops. I'm happy to take a few questions, and my boss is going to tell me who that is.
Thank you, Mr. President-elect. I know you mentioned the economic impact and talked a bit about the relief package you wanted, but I was wondering if we could talk about things that you'll be able to do just as president, or what will sort of govern your decision in terms of the economy. So I was wondering if I could ask what kind of framework you're thinking about as you decide about a Treasury Secretary going forward. Whether you would consider, you had said during the debates that you wanted to punish China over the way that they've been acting, whether that could include economic sanctions or tariffs towards China. And finally, do you think a strong dollar helps or hurts the U.S. as we're grappling with historic unemployment?
Well, look, let me try to take them one at a time.
Please.
You'll soon hear my choice for Treasury. I've made that decision. We've made that decision.
Wow.
And you'll hear that.
He's already made it.
Either just before or just after Thanksgiving, number one. And you'll find it is someone who I think will be accepted by all elements of the Democratic Party.
Elements?
Progressive to the moderate coalitions. Secondly, it's not so much about punishing China. It's about making sure China understands they got to play by the rules. It's a simple proposition. And so that's one of the reasons why we're going to rejoin the World Health Organization. We're going to rejoin on day one as well, and it needs reform, I acknowledge, and rejoin the Paris Climate Accord. And we have to make sure that the rest of the world and we get together and make sure there are certain bright lines Chinese understand. We have to not only deal with this pandemic, we have to plan for the next one. The idea that viruses are going to go away is just not rational. We're going to recalibrate and set up the institutional structures we had in our administration of Obama, Biden, and build on it. And what was your third question?
It was about the dollar, sir, whether you think a strong dollar will help or hurt with unemployment, or generally just how you'd like the Federal Reserve to sort of approach the...
Well, quite frankly, the way the Federal Reserve has been approaching dealing with the dollar I think, has been in a positive direction. Our interest rates are as low as they have been in modern history. And I think that is a positive thing. It lends credence to the possibility of us being able to expend the money and deficit spend in order to be able to generate economic growth right off the bat. And so I think it's been positive so far.
Thank you.
I think he just answered 3 questions. I mean, you know.
Thank you, Mr. President-elect. You have said that if this transition doesn't get going, especially coordination on vaccine distribution, that lives will be lost. How many lives do you think are at risk here?
I think he just pulled out a seating chart of the media.
You've heard the projections. The projections are that if nothing fundamentally changes between now and beginning of February, we're likely to lose up to total of 400,000 lives, another 150,000 lives. And so it's real. Whether it's that, it gets to 360, whatever it is, it's real. And there is no excuse not to share the data and let us begin to plan. Because on day one, it's going to take us time if we don't have access to all this data, it's going to put us behind the 8 ball by a matter of a month or more. And that's lives. How many would be lost as a consequence of that? I can't tell you. But the purpose here is to get, we talked a lot about with the governors about what the immediate needs are. We're going to employ the Defense Reconstructed Act to be able to go out there and dictate companies build and do following things. We need much more testing. We need much more masking. We need gloves.
What did he just say? That was weird. I don't know what he just said.
National Governors Association through the Governor Cuomo and the ones on the line to let us know what their shortages are, what they anticipate. Because we're going to move on day one. That should be moved on now. But if it waits, it takes a long time to get this thing going.
And when you take a step back and you look at the way the president is handling this, his refusal to concede, what do you think is really going on here? In your view, Mr. President-elect, what do you think the president is doing? What are Americans witnessing here?
Let me choose my words here. I think they're witnessing incredible irresponsibility, incredibly damaging messages being sent to the rest of the world about how democracy functions. And I think it is well, I don't know his motive, but I just think it's totally irresponsible.
Are you concerned he may succeed?
Hey, guys, we're not controlling the ads on Twitch. We're not putting any ads in.
I'm not concerned the vast majority of the American people. They've already, all the polling data has indicated, although the Republicans who worry about it is higher, but over 78% of the American people believe it's, without question, it's legitimate. I just think it's, and I think most of the Republicans I've spoken to, including some of the governors, think this is debilitating. It's not it sends a horrible message about who we are as a country.
Thank you, Mr. President-elect. Thank you, Vice President-elect Harris. Appreciate it. Nice to see you as well. Yes, appreciate it. You have said that lives could be lost if you don't start getting briefings from the Trump administration. And now here we are, more than 250,000 lives could be lost. Given that, how do you justify not taking legal action to get the briefings that you say are critical, that you say you need?
It would take a lot of time. It would take time. It's not going to speed it up considerably, in my view. And in the meantime, I am hopeful that I'm going to be able to get cooperation from our Republican colleagues in the Senate and the House, as well as the governors, to build a consensus as to how we proceed when we do.
But why not use every tool in your toolbox to get the information that you say you need to do your job?
I see a lot of people confused. We're still waiting on the Trump coronavirus briefing. It hasn't started yet. It's very late, and we're with Joe Biden right now.
My judgment is that we'll get further along by actually working with our Republican colleagues now, and because the time in which we would win would not materially change necessarily. But it's still an open question. It's an open question. It could change.
So you haven't ruled it out? You haven't ruled out legal action against the Trump administration, against the GSA?
We haven't ruled it out.
Okay. And given the death toll now, more than 250,000 Americans who have now lost their lives, you have said that you would support a nationwide shutdown if scientists recommended it. You've spoken.
You got to stop using that word.
Everybody asks that question every single time I stand here. It was a hypothetical question. The answer was I would follow the science. I am not going to shut down the economy, period. I'm going to shut down the virus. That's what I'm going to shut down.
So that's
I'll
ruled
say
out.
It again, no national shutdown. No national shutdown.
Wow.
Because every region, every area, every community can be different. And so there's no circumstance which I can see would require a total national shutdown. I think that would be counterproductive. But there are constraints in which the degree...
Shouldn't he be attacking the reporter as nasty?
Open. For example, it's one thing to say that you can have, in a state that is there, where their infection rate is not as high, you can have a gymnasium open. It's another thing to say it can only be open 4 hours a day with X number of people. The church I go to, my Catholic church, they don't allow more than 40% of the people to come into the church. Those are rational decisions.
With masks,
I
presume.
Shutting down everything. It's calibrating based on what the threat is.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
President-elect.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President-elect, and thank you, Mr. President-elect and Vice President-elect Harris. A question for you first, which is, what do you make of the fact that the president is having these calls with Michigan county officials amid his bid to overturn the election? He's going to be having also Michigan Republican legislators at the White House tomorrow. Is anything that he's doing making you rethink your strategy? I know you say that you don't want to have legal action right now. And what do you say to Americans, especially immigrant Americans who came to the United States looking for political stability and seeing all of the things that the president is doing?
Hang on, I'm on my way. That's what I say to them, not a joke. And what the president's doing now is really it's going to be another incident where he will go down in history as being one of the most irresponsible presidents in American history.
Wow.
It's just out of the, not even within the norm at all. There's questions whether it's even legal. But it's going to be interesting to see who shows up in this call to meet with the leadership. And this is going to, we've won Michigan. It's going to be certified. We're going to end up making clear that making clear that we won. And, but it just, I just.
Come on, guys.
How this man thinks. And it's hard to fathom. I'm confident he knows he hasn't won and is not going to be able to win, and we're going to be sworn in on January 20th. And I just, but far from me to question his motive, it's just outrageous what he's doing.
But as he ups the things that he's doing, calling officials, is it making you rethink your strategy at all? Is there anything that he would be doing that would make you say, okay, we really have to go to court now? Or are you still watching what he's doing and saying we can still kind of wait and see what happens?
I'm not going to rule anything out or anything in, but at the moment, the strategy is not changing.
And if I could ask a question to the Vice President-elect, would that be
Sure.
okay? Vice President-elect Harris, you talked about your state experience. My question is there anything that you heard from governors today that made you specifically concerned about vulnerable populations, especially as I talk to Americans who say, I don't have the privilege to work from home. I don't have the privilege to social distance if I'm living in a house with multi-generations. Did you hear anything that concerns you specifically, and what can we do for them as a country?
Well, as the president-elect shared with everyone, we heard a lot from the governors, including that. Including the concern that African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans, people who live in rural communities, people who, as groups of people, have historically been under-resourced and underserved. And so there was consensus among the governors, bipartisan consensus, that our federal strategy should reflect those concerns in a way that we support the states with the resources they'll need to get to the folks who have been often overlooked or ignored. And the president-elect, I think, has made it very clear that it's one of our highest priorities to support that. As you may know, in the Senate, I actually led what we called a Racial Disparities Task Force. And that approach is something that we will be incorporating in our administration to ensure that all people have equal access to resources, but also taking into account equitable distribution of resources based on need.
Thank you, President-elect Biden.
Let me add to that. One important thing to understand is there is and we've talked a lot about this, and we talked about it when I was running, seeking the nomination as well. And that is that the idea of the brown, black, Asian American, Native American communities are always the first ones hit the hardest and the last ones who are brought back. We're going to flip that around. It's going to be really important to determine priorities based upon access to the information that's available, access to everything from the vaccine to other opportunities to be able to deal with helping the country, part of the country that's been hurt the worst. 3 times as many African Americans have died than white Americans died from COVID. So there has to be a prioritization. That's what I'd like to know exactly what this administration has in mind in terms of their Operation Warp Speed and how they plan it. And that's what we talked about with the governors today. They all mentioned the need to focus on communities that have been left behind, particularly Governor Cuomo. It's one thing if, for example, vaccines are distributed to all the Walgreens of America. No criticism of Walgreens, but there's a lot of those facilities that aren't in rural communities and are not in poor communities, African American, Latino communities.
That's a real issue.
So we've got to make sure there's access for them.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So there is Joseph R. Biden Jr., President-elect Joe Biden, with just kind of a calm event. I mean, he just took questions, essentially. We're now standing by for the Trump White House Coronavirus Task Force press briefing. We don't know who's going to come out. Trump might be here, he might not. Pence, maybe. Dr. Scott Atlas, a radiologist, maybe. Maybe they'll bring out a podiatrist. Maybe they'll bring out a dentist. We don't know who's going to come out. But people will be saying things, and we will be listening. Let me take this brief interlude just to mention I would really love it. I would really love it if you grabbed yourself a membership on my website, joinpacman.com. As many of you know, we were 100% demonetized by Facebook last week for talking about something Steve Bannon said. We have now regained partial monetization on Facebook. At no point did we have any contact with anybody at Facebook. These things are very irregular. They're like a very bad EKG. Or even an okay one, I guess. I mean, there's sort of up down to a normal EKG as well. But in any case, I would love it if you grabbed a membership at joinpacman.com. It's our primary funding source. It's our most direct funding source. It's not a lot of money, and we control the system completely. And we have this coupon code, Fresh Start, which will save you an ungodly amount of money, just a crazy amount of money you save with the coupon code. Don't feel obligated to use it, but it is available. It's not means tested or anything like that. You will also notice here, so literally, it does look like they were literally waiting for the Biden event to end. So we've got Azar and, various people. There's the general who sycophantically praised Trump the other day. So this is going to be a mess. Also notice now that they seem to have brought in a sign language interpreter, which they didn't do at any point during these. I think they started because they saw Biden doing it during his events. I can't think of any other reason why they are doing it. The sign language interpreter sort of looks like that right-wing reporter, Mary Catherine Ham, interestingly enough. I don't think it's her. And maybe I'm wrong that it's a sign language interpreter. I don't know. But that's what I think is going on here. So we're going to be standing by. Is it going to be Pence? Is it going to be Atlas, MAGA Nanny? I have no idea who we're going to be hearing from. I see the super chats have been coming in, and I do appreciate them. Let me just see here. I want to get us an updated. Oh, is that Fauci? No way. They brought Fauci back. They're desperate. Oh, my God. They're completely desperate if they're bringing in Fauci. Is that Dick Cheney? Who's that guy? If Fauci's here, it is unhinged. Let me say, he should be here. It's just shocking that they brought him in after the very public battle. He'll soon be working for Joe Biden. An additional 12 folks have signed up, putting us at 23, and also 10 more Twitch subs, which puts us at 33. So I think that gets me completely caught up. This is just I mean, like, if after all this, Fauci suddenly reappears as Joe Biden is getting ready to take over, and it looks like Pence only with a mask, wow. Joe Biden being president-elect has really impacted them, huh?
Well, good afternoon. We just completed our second meeting this week with members of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, and we've continued. We've continued to be on the same mission we've been on throughout the course of this year, and that is to save American lives, and to work every day toward that day that we put the coronavirus in the past. I'm joined today, and you'll hear in a few moments from members of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, including those that are leading the effort of distribution, vaccinations under Operation Warp Speed. And I think you will be as impressed as I was at FEMA earlier today when I heard the detailed plans for the virtually immediate distribution of vaccines when they become approved and available.
These guys are desperate, huh?
From very early in this pandemic, at the President's direction, we have followed an approach to this pandemic that was federally supported, state managed, and locally executed. And to that end, this past Monday, we completed our 41st conference call with all of the nation's governors, every state, every territory. There we spoke about our current circumstances where we see cases and hospitalizations rising, but we also continue to speak to them about the expansion of testing, the availability of supplies, and our ongoing efforts to continue to drive forward toward the development and the distribution of a vaccine for the American people. As we gather here today, with cases and hospitalizations rising across the country, President Trump directed us to host this briefing to describe the ongoing work of our task force and our partnership with state and local officials and our partners in the private sector to continue to put the health of America first. But first, let me begin simply by saying that our hearts and our prayers are with all of those families that have been impacted by the coronavirus over the course of the past 10 months. And let me say personally, not a day has gone by that I haven't thought personally about families that have lost loved ones, and I want to assure each of you that you will always be in our hearts and you will remain in our prayers. But we wanted to take this opportunity also to thank the American people for the extraordinary sacrifices that you've made over the course of the past 10 months. We've been through a lot together. We went through 45 days to slow the spread back when the positivity rate across this country was more than 20%. We managed to accomplish our objective. We slowed the spread. We flattened the curve.
They accomplished their objective.
And then during the outbreak across the Sun Belt this summer, when we saw positivity rise to nearly 10%, the American people, officials at the federal and state level, stepped up again, and we put that outbreak in the past. And even as we see help on the way, vaccines being developed at a historic pace, as I mentioned before, as we gather today, we are seeing cases and positivity rising across the country. But we approach this moment with the confidence of experience. We know the American people know what to do. We have forged a partnership that is truly seamless with state and local health authorities. And as we'll describe to you today, we've continued to work 7 days a week, all throughout this year and up to this very moment, to make sure the American people have access to the health care that we'd want any member of our family to have as we meet this pandemic. Now, cases are rising throughout the country. Positivity in the last 30 days has risen from an average of 5% to 10%. And to that end, we've continued the mobilization that began at President Trump's direction early this year. We increased testing from a standing start in the month of February to now. As of today, we've completed more than 170 million tests, and we continue to approve new tests.
Imagine still talking about the number of tests over the last 10 months. I mean,
We're distributing more than 150 million Binax tests to schools and nursing homes around America as we speak. Our mobilization of supplies, you will hear described in great detail, continues to surge each and every day. We actually are able to track PPE and supplies on a hospital-by-hospital basis And so we're carefully monitoring, we're working with state officials, with hospital administrators to make sure that our hospitals have the support they need. Also, as we gather, more than 140 clinical trials for therapeutics continue to be underway, but effective therapies are already available that are widely known among the American people. And for those over the age of 70, we're proud to report that we actually have decreased the fatality rate by more than 70% since those.
Remember that the fatality rate goes down when you do more tests, interestingly enough, and so you really want to look at the infection fatality rate. You guys already know how they mess with you guys with these numbers.
Focusing on accelerating the development, the manufacture, and the distribution of a safe and effective vaccine. And you'll have an update today on the progress from two of our leading experts and those that are coordinating Operation Warp Speed. What I want to say in the midst of all of this to the American people as we begin this briefing,
say something,
is that with the massive increase in testing over the last 10 months, with PPE and medical supplies and equipment that are available to the American people, with the medicines and the therapeutics, and very soon the vaccines that are available, America has never been more prepared to combat this virus than we are today.
What?
Our pledge to each and every...
We were more prepared the day Obama left, actually, with the pandemic response team and the playbook.
Make sure that hospitals that are seeing patients coming in on an increasing basis know that we're going to work around the clock to meet that need. And you have our continuing pledge and the practice of experience that we've had along the way. So in a few moments, you'll hear from members of our team. We're going to begin with Dr. Deborah Birx, who's going to describe what we're seeing in the rising cases. Literally every day for members of the task force begins with detailed analysis of what's happening across the country, and she'll give you our very best information on rising cases and hospitalizations. That information is summarized each and every week for the nation's governors and provided to them in particular detail as well. After Dr. Birx speaks, we've asked General David Sanford with FEMA to provide an update on our ongoing efforts to provide PPE and medical supplies to our hospital needs. We're literally going to make sure, as I said, that as we see cases rising, that we're meeting the needs in hospitals around America to stand up the response that any one of us would want a family member to be able to have access to. Then we've asked Dr. Fauci to give us an update on the incredible and historic progress on the development of.
They're going to let Fauci. They're acting like it's normal that Fauci's here.
For a couple of days. That's great.
Like Trump hasn't said Fauci's out of his mind.
General Gus Perna will outline our distribution plans on Operation Warp Speed. I was at FEMA today, received a detailed briefing about our distribution plans.
You got detailed brief.
And I asked General Perna to come here today to make that presentation to the American people. And it is in a very real sense putting us in a position that literally the day after one of these vaccines is approved, we'll be shipping vaccines to the American people. And within a day after that, we'll be seeing those vaccines injected into Americans, with a particular focus on those most vulnerable and those that are providing health care to the American people. Finally, we'll talk with a bit about the way forward as state and local governments.
With a different president, you mean?
Are continuing to act and take mitigation measures to slow the spread.
There's no way they take questions, right?
We can assure them, as we did governors again this week, that we'll support decision-making at the local level. And we'll continue to support decisions that are made in each individual community based on the circumstances on the ground. But that being said, President Trump wanted me to make it clear that our task force, this administration, and our president does not support another national lockdown. And we do not support closing schools. You'll hear from Dr. Robert Redfield of the CDC that actually the CDC never recommended that we close schools at any point this year. And Dr. Eleanor McCants-Katz, who is also serves with substance abuse and mental health services at HHS, will describe the real costs to children being away from school. But in every one of these cases, we're going to give you the best information that we have.
Sounds like this will be 3 hours long.
And I just want to assure the American people, as I trust that you will have a sense today that we're going to continue to work around the clock to meet this moment. But help is on the way. We have every confidence that in
10 months in, help is coming soon.
We could have one or more safe and effective vaccines for the American people. And as each of us does our part in partnership with state and local officials, each of us does our part to look after our own families and our own communities. I believe the day is coming soon when we will put this coronavirus in the past.
And the day
With
when
that,
he
let me
leaves.
introduce Dr. Deborah Birx, who will update us on cases, and after that, we will get a presentation on the availability of supplies that we continue to make available to hospitals.
This show that they're putting on today is actually stunning. I mean, it's amazing they've decided to put this on now 11 months
Thank you,
in,
Mr.
or
Vice
however
President.
long.
And it's really a moment that we want to call on every American to increase their vigilance. And I want to go through some data about why we are asking people from Elko, Nevada, through Denver, Colorado, to Philadelphia, from Madison, Wisconsin, to El Paso, Texas, and across this great nation to really increase their vigilance at this moment. I want to thank the governors and mayors and county commissioners that I've had the privilege to talk to over the last 4.5 months of being on the road. We can have the first slide, please. The number of universities, 42 states, 30 universities, and a large number of chairmen from our tribal nations. The reason we wanted to really be and hear is to really understand the reality on the ground, what they were facing, and understand how we could be more supportive. And this is really a call to...
It's almost surreal now to have this. It's like, where have you guys been the last 6 months? Now they're pretending like they've been doing this stuff all along and wearing masks, and it's crazy.
The summer surge and the fall surge. So the American people know that this is more cases more rapidly than what we had seen before. But to also make it clear, like before, we do know what to do. And we're asking every American to do those things today. The next slide shows our increase in test positivity. The light brown bars are the number of tests that were performed. But even with the number and ever increasing number of tests performed, you can see the increase in test positivity to around 10%.
Yeah.
In some areas of the country, it is much higher than that. And it illustrates the ongoing community spread in your counties, in your small and large metros, and in your rural areas. The next slide really shows the country as a whole and why we're asking every American to remain vigilant, to do those things that we have been asking you all to do, to wear a mask,
Wow, upper Midwest,
to physically distance, to continue your hand hygiene, but really in this moment of bringing people together, to really limit interactions indoors to immediate households when we see this level of community spread. Behind this level of community spread is a lot of asymptomatic cases. People are spreading the virus because they don't know they're infected with the virus. And so people are coming together indoors. Everyone looks healthy, but among those individuals could be individuals that already are infected, have no symptoms, and are unknowingly spreading the virus to others. It is because of this asymptomatic spread that we have asked people to wear masks indoors and to ask people to wear masks when among others. But sometimes when we go indoors and we're with friends and family, we just assume that if you look okay, you are okay. And now we know that over 50% of the individuals, particularly among those under 35, many could be infected and unknowingly spreading the virus. This virus increased so rapidly because there was an unusual cold snap that began in the northern plains and went down through the heartland, where in the end of September, beginning October, a large number of people moved indoors. So we've been going across the country to really tell the mid-Atlantic states and the Northeast to really increase testing, looking for these asymptomatic cases. And I really want to thank the governors across this great land who have really heeded that call and set up what we call sentinel populations, whether it's nursing home staff, K through 12 teachers, whether it's community college students, county workers, specific businesses, to really have routine weekly testing so that we can see the spread of this virus down to the zip code and really combat that with additional mitigation. The next slide shows what we have been talking about the level of hospitalizations.
It's much better without
And in
Trump
this
there.
slide,
Have you guys noticed?
The hospitalizations by the darkness of the color, and I just want to make it clear what the Vice President talked about. We now can see every admission every day, and I want to thank the hospitals who from July have been sending us that data and improving that data and working with CDC so that we can see new admissions, we can see inpatient status, we can see ICU status, and we can see who's being admitted by age group. Right now it's about 50-50 between those between 40 and 69 and those over 70. But you can see that we have some areas of the country in the hot red, bright pink. And these are the darkest red are those states that have more than 21% of their hospitals are COVID patients. And the light pink is between 16 and 20%. And the light orange between 12 and 15%. But you do see that there's still states in the green areas. And to all of those states that have not seen this surge, to really increase your testing among asymptomatics by setting up these sentinel populations. When we did the 45 days to stop the spread and we asked each state to follow the gating criteria, part of that gating criteria included looking for asymptomatic cases. With these new antigen tests, we have the capacity to really expand testing to find those cases and stop that spread. In the meantime, as we started with, we stopped the surge in the South through very targeted mitigations that start with masks, that start with physical distancing, but also include decreasing those friends and family gatherings where people come together and unknowingly spread the virus. And I want to thank the mayors of Miami City and Miami County, who they were the ones that first in the summer really found how much asymptomatic spread was occurring in household gatherings. And so as you bring together individuals, remember what the Vice President talked about. Every American needs to be vigilant in this moment because we know that when you are, we can mitigate this virus and stop this spread together.
Great.
Now, obviously, if they had been
Thank you,
doing
Dr.
this
Burks.
since March,
And
we'd
as
be
you
better
can
off.
see, with particularity on a state-by-state basis, we want the American people to know that we have eyes on your local hospital. We know about admissions, we know about the availability of ICU beds, and we know about supplies. And from very early on, at the President's direction, we stood up the greatest national mobilization since World War II, and I want the American people to know that that continues to this moment. And General David Sanford, who's been with us every step of the way, is going to brief you on the status of our supply chain and the reserves that we have and our ongoing efforts to make sure that our hospitals and healthcare facilities have the resources and the support to meet this moment. General?
Mr. Vice President, thank you, sir. Dr. Burks, thank you, ma'am. So we are in a much better place and continue to improve upon that capability. You'll see from the slides behind me that we have continued to grow our national stockpile, but also our FEMA stocks to meet the requirements laid out by our states and by our populations. We continue to expand upon these to bridge the vaccine delivery to continue to protect our American population. Since the late summer, we have grown our personal protective equipment capabilities 10 to 15 times over what they were pre-COVID, and continue to grow capability to meet the surge requirements that we may expect from the current.
It's great to have masks, but I don't know that I'd say we're in a good place right now.
Fourth column, we have 4 months of surge capability based on current case diagnosis just for N95 masks. And we continue to grow that capability, more masks being added every month. The Strategic National Stockpile and our FEMA stocks are ready to be the backstop when our states require assistance. And that's all built upon a foundation of a strong domestic medical industrial base, something where we've been able to expand upon or build, in some cases almost from scratch, using our Defense Production Act and other CARES Act authorities to provide the capabilities for our American people, not just now, but into the future and for future crisis or medical events going down. We can go to the next slide, please. This is not done alone. We continue to work with our states on a recurring basis Our FEMA administrator is constantly engaged with the governors or their staffs. We reach out to both our regional administrators, to the state medical or health department officials, and both to the emergency management officials in the state to find out what their needs are to help overcome their challenges and to grow the state's stockpiles. As that relates to our federal emergency management mandate of local execution, state management, federal support. As you saw in the previous slide, and as you'll see on this color-coded map, between our states and the federal government, we stand in a much better position than we were just a month ago, and certainly more than 4 or 5 months ago, to meet the surging PPE demands of our nation. And this is not something that we're sitting and continuing just to watch. It is something that we're continuing to grow upon and continuously analyze so that we can stay ahead of the increases and make sure that we're either procuring and we have a PPE on the way to meet the surging cases. I'll turn it over to Dr. Fauci and General Perna.
All right. Fauci makes his return after being slandered by Trump.
With that, I'm going to invite Dr. Tony Fauci to come up and share his thoughts on the development of a vaccine, which is giving such great hope. But I trust that the panels that you just saw encourage the American people.
I think Fauci's double masked.
We're going to continue to work around the clock to make sure your local hospital has the resources and the supplies that you need to meet this moment. But I think we all know that we ultimately put this pandemic in the past the day that we have a safe and effective vaccine. We've been making historic progress through Operation Warp Speed with our private partners. And Dr. Tony Fauci and NIH.
Just let Fauci speak, dude. Come on.
I've asked Dr. Fauci to update you on the status of vaccine development. And then we will have General Gus Perna, who is coordinating the distribution plan for Operation Warp Speed, working with every state and territory in America to be ready on day one to distribute vaccines as soon as they're available, to give you a brief outline on that plan. So, Dr. Fauci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. As I was sitting there, I was recalling that about 7 or 8 months ago,
I warned all you assholes about this
exact spot at a time when there was really an extraordinary surge in cases in the northeastern part of the country in New York City. And I said that if the virus was left to its own devices, it would cause a considerable degree of devastation, because that's what pandemic viruses do. It's a very powerful force, and you've heard about that and what we need to do about it from Dr. Birx. However, I also said, if some of you can remember, that there's an opposing force to that. And that opposing force is us, you and I, being able to do certain things like mitigation with public health measures, again, which was just mentioned by Dr. Birx. But there's another opposing force to that, and that's a vaccine. And historically, if you look at highly efficacious and effective vaccines, through the years, they've crushed formidable outbreaks like smallpox, like polio, like measles. So in the next couple of minutes, let me tell you about what we have now and what's going to happen in the next few months.
Please.
As you well know, Operation Warp Speed has been supporting directly and indirectly 6 candidate vaccines, 4 of which are either in or completed phase 3 clinical trial. I want to briefly tell you about 2 of them because you have to be interested in this. It is extraordinarily impressive. 2 of the vaccines, one by Moderna and one by the company Pfizer, have completed trials, and the efficacious vaccine efficacy point is extraordinary. With regard to Pfizer, it was 95% efficacious, not only against disease that's just clinically recognizable disease, but severe disease. There were 10 cases of severe disease, 1 in the vaccine, 9 in the placebo. For the Moderna trial, it was 94.5% efficacious, 11 severe events, 0 in the vaccine, 11 in the placebo.
Strong.
For those of you not acquainted with the field of vaccinology, that is extraordinary. That is almost to the level of what we see with measles, which is 98% effective. So that's what we're dealing with. The question is, what about how that is going to be rolled out? I use the word efficacious. That means what happens in a clinical trial. The word effective means is what the ultimate impact of that vaccine is going to be on society.
Do people get it?
The only way you can get an effective program is when people take the vaccine. And we're going to be talking to you about that. And I hear a lot now when we made these announcements this past Monday and then 2 Mondays ago about some reticence of people. Well, did you rush this? Was this too fast? Is it really safe? And is it really efficacious? The process of the speed did not compromise at all safety, nor did it compromise scientific integrity. It was a reflection of the extraordinary scientific advances in these types of vaccines, which allowed us to do things in months that actually took years before.
Wow.
So I really want to settle that concern that people have about that. What about the decision of the data? Who looked at the data? Was that some force that was maybe trying to put something over on you? No, it was actually an independent body of people who have no allegiance to anyone, not to the administration, not to me, not to the companies, that looked at the data and deemed it to be sound. Now that data will be examined very carefully by the FDA, who together with a advisory committee, the Vaccine and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee, or VRBPAC, are going to look at that before the FDA makes the decision about putting this forth for an emergency use
Fauci's on fire.
or ultimately for a license. So we need to put to rest any concept that this was rushed in an inappropriate way. This is really solid. Now, what does that mean for us? We now, as the Vice President said, are telling you that help is on the way, which has two aspects to it. It means that we need to actually double down on the public health measures as we're waiting for that help to come, which will be soon. We'll be getting vaccine doses into people at high priority at the end of December. We're not talking about shutting down the country. We're not talking about locking down. We're talking about intensifying the simple public health measures that we all talk about. Mask wearing, staying distance, avoiding congregate settings, doing things to the extent that we can outdoors versus indoors. If we do that, we'll be able to hold things off until the vaccine comes. Now, I've used that metaphor that the cavalry is on the way. If you're fighting a battle and the cavalry is on the way, you don't stop shooting. You keep going until the cavalry gets here, and then you might even want to continue fighting. And then finally, one other final thing about it. The very impressive efficacy, 94.5 and 95% of a vaccine, should motivate individual to realize that this is something you want to participate in. So we're going to be talking to you about it likely here in the future about why it's important as these vaccine doses roll out, why we have to do two things: continue the public health measure and get vaccinated when the vaccine becomes available. Thank you.
I can see in 6 weeks coming to the podium and saying, guys, get the frickin' vaccine. Just get the vaccine.
Excuse me. Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for this opportunity. So I've been asked to highlight our way ahead on distribution of the vaccine, as just talked about by Dr. Fauci and before that, Vice President Pence. You know, we are here today because our mission was clear. And our mission to Dr. Moncef Slaoui, my co-leader, and really heavily responsible for our success, we are here today because we focused on developing, manufacturing, and distributing a safe and effective vaccine and therapeutics to the American people. Our purpose is really clear: save lives. And it has driven us to this end state, and that's why we're here today. A couple things as we got started in our planning. I will tell you that the planning began almost immediately following our ceremony in the Rose Garden on 15 May. That Monday, we started talking development, manufacturing, and distribution. It's not a thought that we've had in the last 2 weeks. It's required extensive planning and detailed work by a collaboration of individuals, which I'll talk about. A couple of things we decided up front. One,
we were going to be able to deliver the vaccine within 24 hours after EUA. That is distribution to the entire United States of America, to include territories and metropolitan cities. 2, we started with a foundation of expertise. The CDC is the very best at planning and executing distribution of vaccines. We took their core competency and we aligned it with the capability of planners, project managers, and those who could run campaigns. And together, this organization has come up with our strategy for distribution. Third, we took the capacity of the industry, commercial industry, and we brought them into the fold. We wanted to utilize the capability and the capacity that is already established in America, that has a proven track record, that knows how to distribute vaccines, that understands the nuances of ultra cold chain requirements. We knew if we brought Pfizer, Moderna, McKesson, UPS, FedEx, CVS, Walgreens, and hundreds others together, that we would come up with the best solutions, because innovation towards our end state was our only care. It wasn't about egos and it wasn't about credit. It was about how do we solve this complex problem. It was clear immediately following our initial meetings with industry that we had to have full collaboration, to my fourth point, with the jurisdictions and the states. They had to be a big part of our planning sequence. So together, OWS, CDC, industry, and the states and jurisdictions came up with the plan that I'm going to talk to you about here shortly. It is the effort that is almost so common that you will recognize it, because we do it every year. We do it when we distribute influenza vaccines. We do it when other vaccines are being distributed. The difference is now we're pushing mass volume of a new vaccine. And so we needed to have a strategy that was collaborated at all levels with all organizations in order to execute. The last thing we needed to do was we had to create a system to see ourselves. We had to be able to see inside of every territory, state, metropolitan city, understand where the vaccine was from fill-finish site to distribution warehouses down to administration sites. So not only could we maintain the flow of vaccine, but we could account for vaccine that was being administered. That way, we can keep the flow to the American people in a steady drumbeat. As we go forward, first slide, please.
Here we go.
We will distribute the vaccine accordingly. I direct you to the right side of the slide. This is our end state. This is where we want the vaccines to be. We want the vaccines down at the places where the American people are comfortable, at our hospitals, our doctors' offices, down at CVS, Walgreens, down at the long-care healthcare facilities, places where people are comfortable going. So that's where we started, end state. Then we went back to Pfizer and Moderna. We laid out the guidelines that I gave you.
These are terrible slides.
Of them and the commercial industry for distribution, we came up with our plan. It's relatively simple. We take the Pfizer vaccine. They are capable of distributing on their own. They will utilize FedEx and UPS in order to execute distribution. Simultaneously, we will ship ancillary kits, needles, syringes, alcohol wipes, and the diluent required for the vaccine to meet the vaccine at the end state facilities that we're talking about. For McKesson or for Moderna vaccine, what we're going to do is we're going to meet up the vaccine with the ancillary kits at a distribution warehouse. We're going to put them together, and then we're going to distribute through FedEx and UPS down to our administration sites.
Strange moment.
So,
okay.
In simple terms, we're taking it from fill finish. We're bringing together all the requirements for administering the vaccine, and then we're sending it down to the distribution sites. Any place that a state wants to administer the vaccine, as long as they're enrolled.
What I'm looking to hear about is, in that 24-hour period when they say we're going to get this in people's arms in 24 hours, who gets it? Is it initially simply healthcare workers? Because if so, wouldn't it make more sense to send them to the hospitals rather? I mean, we have to hear about that.
Or we can go to 10,000 places in the state. The capability and the capacity exist because we came together in a whole of America approach. It is this effort that I can look you in the face and say to you, EUA comes, 24 hours later, vaccines will be distributed out to the American people.
Who gets
and
it?
Be ready for administration. To this end, our mission is, as I stated, safe and effective vaccines to the American people, and we need to do it in the most timely manner possible because it is all about lives. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Seems like a key thing. Who's getting it first? The first 40 million doses.
Kits have already been
Mr. Vice President, we already have over 1 million kits of both the kits that we'll need for the Pfizer vaccine as well as the Moderna vaccines. Different. 100. Yeah. Excuse me. 100 million. Thank you.
100 million. Oh, okay. Wow. Jesus.
General Perna, thank you. And as he said, from the time President Trump announced Operation Warp Speed, General Perna and his team have been working literally around the clock to build the distribution plan that you see that's in effect. And I hope you all heard that. I asked him how many of those kits have already been manufactured for merging with the Moderna product, and they've already assembled 100 million kits that are ready to go, and that's the supplies that are necessary for administering the vaccine. I must tell you, having received my latest briefing today over at FEMA.
Oh, let anybody else talk. Come on,
every
man.
American can be proud of the fact that we have a plan in place. That the moment that the FDA concludes that vaccine is safe and effective, we have a system in place to begin within 24 hours shipping that vaccines to hospitals, healthcare facilities, and 24 hours after that, literally injecting that vaccine into Americans.
Injection.
We'll also be continuing to develop the prioritization, working with states about their plans, and maybe Bob Redfield of CDC will
so that'll be state level
as well in a moment. CDC will create a recommendation for priorities of who's to be immunized. But
interesting.
If history is a teacher, we know that we'll focus on those most vulnerable. We'll focus on our healthcare workers and first responders at the early going. But it's truly inspiring to me to see the incredible work that Operation Warp Speed has done. And General Perna, I want to thank you for your dedication. With that, as I said, we've continued from the very beginning to operate an approach at the federal level.
Everything Pence says is worthless. It's like, just let the experts talk. Like, let's go right to Redfield with the priority list.
Governments are making in efforts to slow the spread. But to be very clear, President Trump has been very clear that we do not support another national lockdown and do not believe it is necessary.
No one's proposing
Fauci
one.
Actually reflected again on we're not calling for a national lockdown, and we won't. But beyond that, there have been some actions taken in jurisdictions around the country with regard to closing schools. I wanted the American people to know that it is the position of this task force, of this administration, and of the CDC that we do not need to close our schools. I want to invite Dr. Redfield to come forward to speak about that, but I want to emphasize what he's reminded our task force of many times, that actually at no point in this pandemic has the CDC ever recommended closing schools. The more we've learned about this virus, the more it's simply affirmed that. We think our kids belong in the classroom. We're absolutely committed to continue to provide resources so our kids, our teachers, our administrators can safely get back to school. But with that, let me introduce Dr. Redfield, and with him, Dr. Eleanor McCants-Katz at HHS, who is an extraordinary leader. She's going to speak about the unintended consequences of
just talk about the distribution priorities. That'd be better
around America, and then I'll have the secretary have some closing remarks.
Oh my God,
Dr. Redfield.
What an agenda!
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I think it's important first for me to emphasize what you've heard already is that we're not defenseless against this virus. Mask works. Social distancing works. Hand washing works. Being smart about crowds, particularly indoor. works. It's strategic use, as Dr. Burke said, of testing to identify the silent epidemic, to identify the asymptomatic infection so that they can be pulled out of the transmission cycle works. Another point that I want to make is that we need to follow the data. We should be making data-driven decisions when we talk about what we're doing for institutions or what we're doing for commercial closures. For example, as was mentioned, last spring, CDC did not recommend school closures, nor did we recommend their closures today. I will say back in the spring, there was limited data. Today, there's extensive data that we've gathered over the last 2 to 3 months to confirm that K through 12 schools can operate with face-to-face learning, and they can do it safely, and they can do it responsibly. The infections that we've identified in schools, when they've been evaluated, were not acquired in schools. They were actually acquired in the community and in the household. Today, as Dr. Burke said, our big threat for transmission is not the public square. It's small family gatherings where people become more comfortable. They remove their face mask and they get together, and it's this silent epidemic that begins to transmit. But it's not inter-school transmission. The truth is, for kids K through 12, one of the safest places they can be, from our perspective, is to remain in school. And it's really important that following the data, making sure we don't make emotional decisions about what to close.
This is excruciating. I agree with you guys.
And I'm here to say clearly the data strongly supports that K through 12 schools, as well as institutes of higher learning, really are not where we're having our challenges. And it would be counterproductive from my point of view, from a public health point of view, just in containing the epidemic, if there was an emotional response to say, let's close the schools. Finally, I wanted to echo what has been said by the Vice President and Dr. Fauci, is we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, where we are to now. And this is why now more than ever, as was said by Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci and myself, now more than ever, we're asking all Americans to redouble their efforts to be vigilant, to embrace masks, social distancing, hand washing, our advice about crowds, and really to support using the data to make decisions in their communities, particularly as relates to K through 12s and institutes of higher learning. These clearly, the data support that it's really important from a public health perspective, both from the pandemic as well as what you'll hear about in a minute, that these schools stay open. Finally, I just want to end on a clear message of confidence that I'm confident that we're going to emerge successful and bring this pandemic to an end. I don't have any doubt in that.
Oh, okay.
But today, we need all of us to go all in. Go all in with face coverings, social distancing, hand washing, smartness about crowds, doing our part to help identify the silent epidemic. And I have confidence that at the end of the day, we're going to get a very achievable goal, which is to get this pandemic under control. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you.
So now she'll advocate for keeping schools open.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. In my role as Assistant Secretary for Mental Health and Substance Use, I feel very strongly about the need to protect and promote the mental health of all Americans. As a psychiatrist, I'm continually thinking about the mental health effects of this unprecedented situation and how best to mitigate the impact. Individuals across our country are living with stress that they have likely never experienced. We must find a way to best alleviate that stress without ignoring the fact that our nation faces a very real and deadly virus. I often think about this in the context of our country's children. I lead the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, which is the only federal agency whose primary charge is addressing mental and substance use disorders across the country. Where better to start in addressing this challenge than with our nation's young people? Protecting and also fostering the social and emotional well-being of children is...
She really is terrible. When Trump did one of these round tables at the White House with like a huge, it was actually a square table, round table. She was like in the back. She wasn't even allowed at the table. She was in the back, and they had her stand up and just talk about, open schools, we just don't need this at this point. We're almost at Thanksgiving. Then you've got winter break. This is not, let states decide what makes sense. New York City has closed schools. This is totally useless.
Cannot be overstated. However, we also cannot overstate the need to address the fear, uncertainty, and safety considerations with returns to school. I understand that parents and teachers may feel great anxiety. That is why we must put into place the safety measures we know work. We must use masks. We must enforce social distancing.
This delivery is a little bit odd too, but
Creative and innovative ways to limit the number of children and teachers in the building at any given time. There are tools we have, and we must think through how best to use them to keep our schools open.
Thank you very much.
We know that over 7.4 million children in this country live with serious emotional disturbances, and over 60% receive services from the school system. We know that children with disabilities are losing ground with the closure of schools. We know that millions of children across the country are experiencing child abuse and neglect that goes undetected due to lack of contact with school personnel who serve as mandatory reporters. We must work together to address these issues. I believe strongly that we need schools to open in communities whose data indicate it's safe to do so. But we cannot forget the protection of our teachers and school staff. If they don't feel it's safe to return to work, it will not help to open schools. We must ensure that teachers, school staff, and parents are engaged in the solutions that we ultimately choose. Just as I'm suggesting that we engage our teachers, I suggest also that we recognize the very real mental health considerations of what you may have heard called pandemic fatigue.
Uh-oh.
The engagement of Americans all over the country in slowing the spread of the virus is a strategy I think we should all consider. Again, we know masks work, but we know that some Americans aren't sure and may not be as compliant as we'd like.
Well,
This
tell
is
them the
gravely
truth.
frustrating for local officials, but rather than punishing or sanctioning, what if we employ a different technique? What if we recognize the psychological aspects of the fatigue and try to reinforce positive behavior with rewards rather than solely sanction what we deem to be bad behavior? For example, we know that compliance on college campuses has been a challenge, and individuals in this age group are a potential source of spread. What if colleges implemented a random reward system for mask wearing? This could be as simple as implementing a small gift card being given out to a student wearing a mask. This technique, known as contingency management, has had great success in the behavioral health care treatment.
It's getting weird.
I offer it as a consideration which acknowledges the psychological aspects of our life's changes. I want to conclude by saying that the physical effects of coronavirus are very real. And this virus has brought along with it stress, anxiety, and fear that you may have never felt before. COVID-19 has brought devastating loss of life to families across the nation. In addition to those who have lost lives to the infection itself, there are those of you who have what I call COVID-related deaths in your family. These are not deaths by infection, but death by suicide or death by drug overdose during this pandemic. Please know that we have not forgotten you or your loss. Your loss is great, and my job is to do all I can to prevent additional families from experiencing that loss. To the parents and teachers who are afraid and confused, that fear and anxiety is real and it's stressful. To the people who are without a job and unsure of your next steps, your stress is real too. The stress of this situation can often feel too great to handle, and we take very seriously.
This is all true and important. I just find it weird to kind of crowbar it into this briefing. I just am unsure, but these are important messages.
Open and ready to serve. As you struggle with these great stressors, especially during the holiday season, please try to stay connected to loved ones. Please reach out to friends and family. And please know that SAMHSA's National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is available to help at any time at 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-TALK. Your mental health is critically important, and we want to do all we can to protect it.
Thank you very much. And then I think next we will hear from Alex Azar. Yes, there we go. He is quite a sycophant. Let's see.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vice President. Good to see all of you. The doctors have well covered the serious state of the epidemiological evidence that we have, and they've talked about the steps that we can and should be taking, but they've also talked about the steps that aren't evidence-based that we should not be taking right now. We are much better prepared today than we were months ago. General Sanford talked about our PPE supplies, our ventilator supplies. The Vice President talked about our expanded testing capacity, nationwide reach of over 120 million tests available in the month of November alone, 70 million of them point-of-care tests. We've improved dramatically our quality of care at our hospitals, our ability to treat people who suffer from COVID. My message to the American people is to hang in there with us. Take the simple steps that the doctors have talked about today, because there is light at the end of the tunnel. This isn't forever. Thanks to President Trump's Operation Warp Speed, we have got such a brighter future ahead, and I want to see everyone get there. President Trump called me in and said, Alex, all the experts are saying it's going to be optimistically 18 months for a vaccine.
President Trump called me in and said, Alex, why does it always smell that way when you walk into my office?
Could we shorten that? Is there anything we could do? And I said, yes, there is. And we crafted the greatest biopharmaceutical research, development, manufacturing, distribution, mobilization, in partnership with the Defense Department and with the constant, personal, unwavering support of President Trump.
This guy is the worst.
Results on that. And this is thanks to the leadership people like General Perna, running Operation Warp Speed, bringing the complete logistics and operations and procurement power of the Defense Department to the table. And it's thanks to people like Dr. Monsef Slaoui, probably the world's greatest vaccine developer, who's dedicated his complete life and talents to this work for the American people. And we're seeing the results. They said it couldn't be done, but 10 months into this novel pathogen hitting our shores, last week we approved Eli Lilly's monoclonal antibody. We shipped product that very afternoon to patients, and already over 60,000 courses of therapy have been delivered. Regeneron's combination monoclonal antibody is pending at the FDA right now. And as we've talked about, over the last 2 weeks, we've seen just unprecedented, historic news about vaccines. 2 vaccines, each with 95% efficacy, rivaling the 98% efficacy of our measles vaccine, produced in some of the largest vaccine clinical trials ever conducted in history, over 40,000 patients in each of these clinical trials, demonstrating good safety profiles. This was done in 10 months. 10 months. And now, Pfizer's partner, BioNTech, has announced that tomorrow they intend to file for emergency use authorization at the FDA.
Tomorrow.
We would expect to see Moderna filing soon also. We also have this comprehensive distribution plan that General Perna walked through that builds on a public-private partnership between the United States and these incredible private sector partners with a goal to make the distribution of this vaccine as convenient to you as the flu vaccine is. And working in partnership with our states, because the states know the situation on the ground, and we work to support them. And we will ship millions of doses of vaccine within 24 hours of FDA approval. So my message is hope and help are on the way. Operation Warp Speed is already delivering, and it's going to keep delivering in the days and weeks ahead. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Let me say, my hope is that Americans looking on and all of you responsible for sharing the news know that this team, working in cooperation with our states and with the cooperation of the American people, has made great progress. And we're getting there. We're getting there, America. And as I said at the outset,
does Pence take questions? And if so, how many of them did you lose the election, sir?
Supplies that are available today for our hospitals, our ability to track what's happening at your local hospital to make sure that it has the PPE and the equipment and supplies to provide the health care that your family may need. I hope as you heard about the extraordinary distribution plans of Operation Warp Speed and the confidence that Dr. Fauci expressed today, and the news that one of those research companies is going to submit an emergency use authorization tomorrow on the very first vaccine, that we are literally, we could well be just a matter of a few short weeks away from a vaccine being available across this country for the most vulnerable among us and for those that are caring for them in our hospitals and our clinics. I hope everything you've heard today gives evidence of what I said at the start, that America has never been more prepared to combat this virus. But let me be clear as I close. We all have a role to play in the days ahead. And you heard this team say, as we see that finish line, we see light.
Finish line's coming quick for this administration.
And you should see evidence here that we are rounding the corner to that day that we have a vaccine for the American people. We do want to encourage every American to continue to do your part. Wash your hands, practice social distancing, wear a mask when social distancing isn't possible. Do your part to put the health of your family, the health of your neighbors, the health of the people in your community first. We are all in this together. And as I've said many times from this podium over many, many months, I know that with the cooperation of the American people, with our incredible doctors and nurses and first responders, with the extraordinary partnership of federal and state and local health officials, and with God's help, we will get through this.
What?
And we will get through this together.
Mr. Vice President.
Thank you all.
Mr. Vice President. Are you really not going to take?
Did you win the election, Mr. Vice President? Will you admit you didn't win? Anyway, so there's that. Wow, what an event. What a day. What a day. What a day. What a day. Let's listen to that again.
Are you really not going to take? All of you need to answer this. Why is the federal government? What is going on?
Oh my God, what an absolute and complete mess. Thanks everybody for joining me. We will be continuing to cover these events. If we ever hear from Donald Trump again, and I don't know if we will, I will certainly be with you. Please make sure if you are watching on YouTube on the way out, hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing. It just pushes the algorithm a little bit to maybe recommend a video or two to you in the future. Hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on Twitch, please hit the follow button. We are very, very strongly trying to get to 100,000 Twitch followers. And if you're watching on Facebook, hit that like button. I will see everybody again very, very soon.